Hello, Concordance. For everyone else, Concordance recently uploaded a video entitled Gun Control Claims. There's quite a lot that could be said about this video. I'm only going to say a little bit of it. I'm going to deal with about the first minute and a half or so. That said, Concordance, take it away.
In this video, I'm going to evaluate 4 popular claims made by opponents of gun control in the U.S.
Opponents of gun control, also known as people in favor of individual rights, gun rights.
I'll evaluate these claims against the real-world facts.
Cool. Sources
are available in the video description. All comments are allowed without moderation, but please attempt to back any assertions with primary sources. In the words of Christopher Hitchens, what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Claim 1. Hitler outlawed guns, presumably to make it easier to control the population. Reality. Following World War I, the Treaty of Versailles, signed by the Weimar government, disarmed most of Germany. Gun regulations in 1919, under Article 169 of the Versailles Treaty, forbid ownership of any handguns or long guns by citizens and militia. In 1928, 9 years later, during a period of German hyperinflation, a law was passed which allowed citizens to own guns of any type, provided they had a permit and were of, quote, persons whose trustworthiness is not in question and who can show a need for a gun permit.
I really don't understand the bringing up of the period between 1919 and 1928. Germany lost World War I, and they had to disarm in 1928. Germany decided, fuck it, we're getting some firearms back, and here are some conditions.
A select group of officials and law enforcement were exempted from the permit requirement. In other words, the laws in Germany, prior to Hitler, were very similar to currently proposed regulations in the U.S.
So here he's talking about what's happening in 1928, which he's calling before Hitler. So the 1928 period onward is what's relevant, because by then the gun rights for the citizens had been restored with some restrictions. So the 1919 period, as I mentioned earlier, to 1928 is, the reason it's brought up is a mystery to me. So 1928 going forward, gun rights are being restored to the citizens.
Under Hitler, the idea of citizenship was redefined to exclude Jewish people and certain political opposition groups.
And there's the trick. Yes, if you were a favorable person in Hitler's eyes, you had certain rights. If you were an enemy of Hitler, you know, the people who might be best served by having the capacity to resist him, those were the people who couldn't have the capacity to resist him. Jews, the Social Democrats, the Communists, and so on.
But ownership of guns in the permitted groups was expanded. Permits were now valid for 3 years instead of 1.
In the United States, it used to be the case that there was a period of time in the United States where citizens could own firearms, but black people weren't citizens, so they couldn't. And then this war thing happened, after which time the black soldiers who had fought in the war were returning to their homes, whereupon they were not infrequently summarily disarmed and executed. So it would be just as true to say of the United States that for every period in time we've not had that much gun regulation for citizens. But the people who actually would have been best served by being able to retain their weapons so as to defend themselves were the people who were summarily and routinely disarmed so as to make sure that they would always be at the mercy of the people who hated them. In Hitler's Germany, if you were friend, he didn't mind. Sure, have a gun. Whatever, I'm not worried about you. You're on my side. Oh, you disagree with me politically? Fuck, you can't have a gun, because in a couple of years' time, when I start rounding all of you up to have you marched off to the Hooskow and gassed to death, it might be a little bit more difficult for me if you can shoot back. And I wouldn't want to be inconvenienced by some uppity people thinking that they shouldn't have to be marched off to the Hooskow to be executed. Now, I don't know what would have happened had all the Jews been armed, or had all the political dissidents been armed. I don't have a crystal ball. They may not have chosen to resist, but my argument is that they would not have been any worse off had they all been armed. I mean, after all, once you've started genociding people, there's not many more things you can do to them that is worse than that. So they would have been better served, in my estimation, if they'd had firearms, had they chosen to want to resist. Whether they would have chosen that, I don't know. I do know that the way it worked out, very often they didn't. Jews would obediently march to the trenches that had been dug, stand there, little families clustered together, obediently disrobe, and dutifully march after having watched other people be shot to death, dutifully march into place, stand there, and just wait to be shot to death. Perhaps if they'd had firearms, that wouldn't have happened, but I don't know. As I said, I don't have a crystal ball. But one thing that I do know is that in my neck of the woods, my part of the country, there are people like me. And though I don't have a crystal ball to predict the future, I do know one thing, and that is that a crystal knocked would be very much more difficult to pull off here, because unlike the Jews and political dissidents in Nazi Germany, people in my neck of the woods, we shoot back. Have a great day.